Alright, what's going on, everybody? Got a lot to talk about with this, so Nightmare 30th Anniversary Edition, Uncut. Finally. First thing, there's some pretty interesting claims on the back of this DVD that's in the synopsis. So I'm just going to start with that. Nightmare, I'm going to read from it. Nightmare, the low-budget 1981 horror film that fans have requested and clamored for on DVD for years, has arrived. Many fans claim this will be the biggest-selling horror film in the history of DVD. Voted by many websites as the ultimate horror film, this Lord cult classic is now available for the first time on DVD for all horror fans to enjoy. Ultimate horror film? That's a pretty big claim. Well, they're not saying that they feel it is. They're just saying that it has been voted on many websites, but I have to disagree with those websites. This special double disc platinum edition could be a real collector's item, probably. Many website horror forums speculate the DVD will sell 100,000 discs. You never know. It's possible. So with that being said, I do remember when this was announced, and it was announced within their first year of releasing movies, their first year as being a company, and then it got pushed back, and it got pushed back, and it got pushed back. Apparently the reason is because he kept finding better prints. There's three different prints on here, which I'll get into in a little bit. But apparently that is the reason why I got pushed back so much. It's a 2-disc, which I didn't know at the time. Actually, I didn't see anything on it being a 2-disc, but nice surprise. Let me go into the synopsis here. Basically, a criminally insane man named George Tatum. He has visions of murder, and he's extremely disturbed. Is on a experimental drug program at a mental hospital in New York, and they believe him, or his doctor believes him, to be cured, pretty much. Which we know from the very beginning he's not, and it's quite confusing as to why the doctor believes he's cured, because it's pretty obvious he's not. I mean, even the staff at the hospital, you'll just have to watch. There's one problem it has. Most of the problems it has are in a suspension of disbelief, I guess. A lot of the problems are in that, but we'll get that to later. He is pretty much, I guess it's kind of like on parole. He doesn't have to stay there anymore, but he does have to come back for visits, to see how his progress is going. Well, one day he decides to leave New York, and he just doesn't show up for his appointments, and people start getting worried, and he goes to Florida to terrorize a family and sort of a town. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about really the synopsis. I don't like to give away a whole lot. It is a good film. I enjoyed it, but it's not without its problems, and it's most certainly not the ultimate horror film. One thing I would like to stress is that I know when I first started reading about this movie, years and years ago, I mean, it was talked about like it was the most violent thing ever made. It was the goriest slasher horror film ever made. That it was just unbelievably just violent and nasty. Do not expect the goriest slasher film ever made. And I'm not really sure. I guess it's a slasher film. At the end, it definitely turns into a slasher film. But for a lot of the first, second acts, it's kind of more a thriller. Well, but I guess just more of just a regular horror film. There's not a whole lot of slashing going on. Not saying that the film is not gory. Just don't go into it expecting a gore fest right off the bat. There are some scenes. It does have its moments. I'm not saying it's not gory, and that it's not satisfying in that aspect. But just go into it, expecting a normal amount, and you'll be happy. There are plenty other slasher films that are much more gory than this. Hell, one right off the top of my head is Pieces. That's much gorier than this, but it does have its moments. Now, most of the violence is in the very beginning, not midway, but beginning of the second act. So from start to beginning of the second act, and then it stops. And it becomes more this guy stalking and toying with this family. And then the rest of the violence and gore happens in the very final 20 minutes or so. And the final scene is pretty... It does have a good amount of blood in it. And gorehounds will be satisfied. Like I said, it does have a lot of problems. Suspension of disbelief type stuff. They show no reason for this doctor to believe that he is competent. I mean, right before it, soon before they decide this, he's like freaking out in a straitjacket. So for them to go, oh, well, you look okay now, is a little bit ridiculous. There's a few other little things, but I mean, you got to take some of these movies with a grain of salt. I mean, this is a low budget movie made in 1981. Can't be too tough on it, but there are a few things that make you kind of giggle and go, okay, yeah, right. One off the top of my head is there's a guy getting strangled, and his girlfriend is not far away. The house is quiet. The kids are asleep. And he's being dragged up these stairs, and he's struggling as he's being dragged up the stairs, and there's not a sound being made. She can't hear anything. It's going to make a lot of sound. But you gotta kind of look over some of this stuff. Pluses on it, I definitely... It has some amazing shots in it. For the budget they had and what they did with some of these shots is really amazing. One of my favorite shots in the entire film is George is in the house, and I'm not going to tell you how this is set up, but it's set up fantastically. He's in the house. He's in a closet. He's hiding. The homeowner and her boyfriend are in the house, and they're right outside the closet, and he's got it open just a crack, and they show him in there with the light coming up. He's all sweaty, and he's got this knife here, and he's like looking. It's an amazing shot. It's one of the creepiest shots I've ever seen. There's a lot of really cool shots in this. When you see some of the interviews on here, a lot of the special effects guy kind of says he wasn't... Some of the effects were silly, and the other effects, they did 2 effects shoots. the guy in Florida who did the majority of the effects, named Cleve Hall, and then um, the effects they did in New York, which is the main effects scene at the very end of the film, which you see via flashbacks throughout. And I believe that famous scene in the bed, the kind of Godfather-ish esque scene, I believe was this guy, probably heard of him, Edward French. Um, he was the makeup effects guy that did that. So he actually did probably the biggest effects scene in the entire movie, which is really awesome. And he also kind of felt that his work was a little shoddy. But I tell you what, all the effects work in my opinion, because you do know you're watching a 1981 horror film, so you know what to expect. And I like practical effects. I like the way they look. Yes, sometimes they look really fake, but I still think they work way better than any digital blood ever could, at least at this point in time. 10 years down the road, who knows? So, overall, it's a good horror film. There's moments of suspense. It's shot very well. Um, it does have good effects, in my opinion, for a low-budget 1981 horror film. It's not as gory as you're going to expect if you haven't seen the uncut version, but it does have enough that, gorehounds are going to be pleased. They're not going to go away feeling shortchanged. Now onto the DVD. There are three prints on this. The first one is a full-frame, color-corrected. This one's from 2005, and it was approved by the director, Romano Scavolini. It is a little dark. It's a little fuzzy. It's got a lot of print damage, but it's not terrible. All of these are completely watchable. Now, don't expect, any of these to be flawless at all. And actually, the full frame one kind of adds a little bit more of a sleazy, nasty feel to it. Plus, when he's walking down 42nd Street in the beginning, you can see all the marquees above him. Well, not all the marquees, but a lot of the ads for some of the movies that were playing when he's walking down 42nd Street. I noticed the Five Deadly Venoms, Kung Fu Massacre, Caligula. Now, in the other two prints, you can't see that. They're cut off. So you might just want to check that out just for that little piece of history that was captured. The second print is a 2008 high def master created from the two best 35mm prints. It's in widescreen, and on the second disc, a brand new 2011 16.9 from a recently discovered slightly better 35mm print. So the full frame looks the worst, I guess you would say, and then the 2008 looks a little bit better, and the 2011 looks the best. They all have print damage. It's just, it gets a little bit clearer and colors more defined as you go along. Animals, I tell you, they'll drive you nuts. Now, on disc 1, you have Making of a Nightmare, which is an interview with Baird Stafford, who played George Tatum. Cleve Hall is the makeup effects guy. Oh, and another thing, the whole Tom Savini thing, if you guys don't know, when this movie was, when the posters were printed and the movie was released, it was touted that Tom Savini did the effects, which, we all know he didn't. But that whole thing as to why it was said, and it's cleared up in here. Even there are two Two people say two different things, but still. And ex-distributor Tom Ward. You also have on disc 1 New York Nightmare, which is an interview with Edward French. I don't know what he's doing. Disc 2. This is where it gets interesting. Disc 2 has the slightly better 2011 print. Two different Nightmare trailers, Code Red trailers, and here's where it's very interesting, an uncensored 95-minute Italian interview from Romano Scavallini in Italian language with no subtitles. No, an hour-and-a-half interview with the director in Italian with no subtitles. And it's really funny when you put the second disc in here. I also wanted to show you this. This is kind of cool. They made the second disc look like a DVD-R, but it's got the Code Red there. Which apparently somebody on their forum was like, I can't believe you sold people burned discs. And they're like, God, it's just supposed to look like that. Which is pretty obvious once you see it. It might not come across here on a video, but on the menu, it says that. It says uncensored 95-minute Italian interview from Romano Scavallini in Italian language, exclamation point. Get excited about not being able to understand what the hell this guy's fucking saying, unless you speak Italian. Which, hey, I am sure there are some people out there that are going to get this DVD, and they know how to speak Italian. Even here in America. I'm sure there's going to be a few. But you know what? Probably 95% of people that buy this DVD, that feature is completely fucking worthless to them. Completely worthless to me. I don't know. Couldn't you put something else on there? I mean, it's great, I guess. You get to see the director. I don't know. But I can't understand what he's saying for an hour and a half. Why am I going to sit there and watch an hour and a half interview when I can't understand what he's saying? Like, come on. Really? Couldn't you put something else on here? Hell, I would have been happy with more trailers or TV spots or something, other than an hour and a half interview that I can't understand. Completely pointless. It kind of irritates me. Actually, it really irritates me. But whatever. Who knows? Code Red is a very eclectic company, run by some eclectic dudes. But yeah, so other than that, a pretty damn good release from Code Red. A pretty good film. So yeah, I would say go out today. Comes out today. Go out and get this. Pick it up. Because if they're right, and this thing sells the way it's being said to sell, then these 100,000 copies won't last too long. So, go out and pick it up today. Nightmare Uncut 30th Anniversary Edition. See you later.